In this video, I'm going to tell you a story about John F. Kennedy, or JFK as many refer to him. Now, you likely know Kennedy as the 35th President of the United States. He served at the height of the Cold War, working to prevent nuclear war. Kennedy was a ladies' man and an icon in American culture, but most of you probably know him as the subject of the most famous assassination in American history, the Kennedy assassination. Yet perhaps his most incredible story happened long before he would enter the White House. August 1st, 1943, Kennedy would have an encounter with a Japanese destroyer that would cement his legacy as an American war hero.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Kennedy was born into a family of privilege and had the great opportunity to serve his country. He graduated from Harvard University in 1940 and was planning on attending graduate school at Stanford University in California until everything changed. December 7th, 1941, a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor occurred and America was a nation at war. Kennedy's older brother, Joe, joined the Navy and was training to be a pilot. JFK also wanted to enlist, but had complications due to his back pain. If he still wanted to enlist, he would need external influence. Kennedy's father, Joe Kennedy, was the U.S. ambassador to Great Britain and good friends with Captain Alan Kirk, who was the director of naval intelligence. This was exactly the break Kennedy needed, and he was soon assigned into the Naval Reserves. His next big break came when he was able to attend officers' training school in the late summer of 1942. Once put in combat, Kennedy was in command of the PT-109. Soon Kennedy and his crew of 11 sailors were conducting nightly attacks on Japanese barge traffic. The crew of the 109 also found themselves on patrol around the remote islands, often serving as lookouts for Japanese destroyers. One evening, the 109 was on patrol along with 15 other PT boats. At 2 a.m., Kennedy noted a vague silhouette of a ship approaching in the darkness. His first thought was that another friendly PT boat was slowly approaching, but he soon realized it was the massive Japanese destroyer Emigari. Kennedy attempted to steer his boat into firing position, but before he could react, the massive destroyer slammed into the much smaller boat. This cut the PT-109 in half, killing 2 of his sailors on impact. Ironically, the Japanese destroyer didn't even realize that they had struck an enemy vessel, and they kept sailing on. Kennedy and 4 of his men clung to the wreckage of the 109. They yelled out into the darkness, only able to hear 5 other members of their crew. As dawn approached, Kennedy was able to finally survey the crisis from the night before. He would later go on to state, "There's nothing in the book about a situation like this. A lot of you men have families and some of you have children. What do you want to do? I have nothing to lose." The end of the following day, he made the command decision to abandon the sinking wreckage and lead his men by swimming 3 miles towards the faint outline of a tiny island on the horizon. However, there was a small issue. Some of the men were wounded and couldn't make the swim. Kennedy would give one of the men a life jacket and then proceeded to tow him through the water. He had to secure the tow rope in his teeth so that he could have his arms free to swim. After hours of swimming, they finally made it to dry land, relieved. That relief was short-lived, as the island would not offer much due to the lack of food and water, along with lacking shelter from the blazing tropical sun. As his crew regathered their strength, Kennedy set out once again, but this time alone, to swim the route that he knew they had taken previously through the islands. He hoped to find a friendly vessel. His search provided very little, and he returned to his crew nearly empty-handed. After spending several days on the barren island, Kennedy looked around at his crew, and they looked tired, but he knew that they had just enough strength to make another long swim to a larger island he spotted in the distance. The crew set out for their second journey, with Kennedy again towing along the wounded sailor. After 4 days with no food or water, the crew of the 109 crawled onto the new island, delighted by the sight of coconut palm trees. Finally, they had found shade. They also found food with the coconut meat, and hydration with the coconut milk. Confident that his crew was now safe, Kennedy and his friend George Ross knew they had one more exhausting swim to make. They set out for yet another swim, this time to the tiny island of Nauru, several miles away. They were confident that there they would find friendly natives to help them. When they arrived on the island, they found that the natives were trusting towards Americans. They were willing to help. Kennedy had a plan. He needed to make contact with friendly forces. However, he couldn't risk attempting the canoe with the natives for fear of being seen by a Japanese patrol boat or plane. He instead cut a message on a coconut that read, "Nauru Island, Commander, native knows post-it. He can pilot, 11 alive, needs small boat, Kennedy." He then handed the coconut to one of the natives and said, "Rendova, Rendova." The next morning, the natives returned with food and supplies. Kennedy was given a letter from the commander of the New Zealand camp. The letter directed Kennedy to stay put with the natives, where the New Zealand forces would reunite them with the U.S. troops. Not too soon later, Kennedy was relaxed as he watched the PT-157 rumble over to greet him. Shortly after picking up Kennedy, his crew of 10 sailors saw the 157 sailing towards them. After 6 long days, their captain came through, and they were all going home. The remaining members of the crew all returned home safely. But by 1944, the injuries he had sustained throughout his military career would send him stateside in order to receive treatment and physical therapy. It's here that Kennedy would discover his older brother Joe had been killed in action, piloting a top-secret operation. This was crushing to the family, and it would leave John as the eldest son. In 1945, John was honorably discharged. He would later undergo back surgery as a young U.S. Senator 8 years later. For his service in World War II, John F. Kennedy received the Navy and Marine Corps Medal and the Purple Heart. John also kept and had preserved the coconut shell with his inscription. So that is the story of the PT-109, and is just one of the many stories from JFK's famed life. Thank you for watching the Zach and Matt show. Please subscribe for more historical and political content. And thank you for watching.